99% of job seekers think they know what recruiters want, but they actually have no idea. But after 10 years in recruitment and helping CEOs, founders, and executive teams hire more than 250 positions, I've seen the 5 habits that quietly separate the top candidates to recruiters. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 5 habits that help recruiters explain you clearly, sell your results, trust your judgment under pressure, and rely on your consistency so that the recruiters champion you to the hiring managers. Okay, so habit number 1, be easy to understand in 30 seconds. So let me start with something recruiters almost never say out loud. If I can't explain you clearly to a hiring manager in under 30 seconds, you become a risk. Not because you're bad, not because you're underqualified, but because you're hard to position. And I've seen this kill great candidates time after time. So here's what it looks like behind the scenes. Now, I've been on hundreds of recruiter to hiring manager phone calls, and I've heard the recruiter start with something like this. Well, they've done a bit of everything. They've worked with multiple stakeholders, they've done some strategy, some delivery, but then the hiring manager will always stop them and ask this. Okay, but what do they actually do? And that candidate rarely moves forward. So let me explain it like this. Think of yourself like an Amazon product, because before anyone reads reviews, before they scroll through the features and functions, and before they look at the details, they read the product title. And if that title is confusing, it's vague or overloaded, well, people, they don't click, even if the product has 5-star reviews. Now, most candidates treat interviews like the product description. They explain everything, they add tons of context, and they list all of their achievements. But the recruiters listening, well, they're still stuck at the title level, and they need one clean line that says this: what you are, what you do best, and what problem you solve. Because average candidates, they sound like this. I've had quite a varied role, whereas strong candidates, they sound like this. I led A to deliver B so that C improves. It's clear, it's specific, and it's repeatable. And it's something a recruiter can lift and reuse to their client. And this is why tell me about yourself in interviews matters so much. Because senior candidates don't walk you through their CV. They don't start in year 1, and they don't over-explain. They give a clear product title for their career. Because if I can pitch you cleanly, I'm going to champion for you harder. And so here's the psychology underneath it. Recruiters are often measured on speed, on accuracy, and credibility with their clients. And your clarity, well, it reduces the risk on all 3. Because if you're easy to explain, you're easy to sell to the client. So try and remember this. If your career doesn't have a clear title, it probably won't get clicked. And the candidates who move fastest in the job market, well, they make themselves simple to understand and not smaller. So here's the one thing I want you to take from this first habit. It's this: if you're hard to explain, you're hard to hire. And if this already feels uncomfortably accurate, do me a favor, hit the like button so that I know it's resonating. And up next, it might be the most important point you learn from the entire video, as it's the habit that makes strong candidates become unstuck. Okay, so habit number 2 is they speak in outcomes and not responsibilities. Because recruiters don't evaluate you the way your manager does. Because your manager will see your effort, your attitude, and your day-to-day work. Recruiters don't. They have a short conversation with you, they review your CV, and then they have a conversation with a client who's got limited patience. And that dynamic, it changes everything, because this is the recruiter's reality. When a recruiter speaks to a hiring manager, they don't say things like this: oh, they work really hard and they juggle a lot. They say things like this: they reduced cycle time by 18%, or they stabilized a failing team, or they delivered a $3 million program on time and on budget. And that's the only currency that hiring managers really buy: results. And if you don't give the recruiter outcomes, well, they've got nothing credible to sell you on. So here's the filter running in the recruiter's head. It's this: can I defend this person in 2 sentences when the client pushes back? And outcome-based candidates are defensible, whereas task-based candidates, they're just not. Because when a client inevitably asks, why should I interview them? Recruiters need proof and not process. Think of a recruiter presenting you to their client a bit like a real estate agent. Now, the real estate agent won't describe how many hours the builder worked on the house. They describe the location, the price, the amount of bedrooms, and maybe the transport links. Because facts sell houses, effort on the build, that doesn't. And so you have to remember this, as it might be the most important thing you take from the video. The candidates who speak in outcomes sound more senior, reduce the client's skepticism, and make the recruiter look sharp, and then they get hired quicker. And that's often why they get prioritized more. It's not because they're louder, but it's because they're easier to justify and to place. Because recruiters are mentally saying, I don't need you to be impressive. And outcomes make you explainable. So when you speak in outcomes, you're not just signaling leadership, you're giving the recruiter ammo. And the candidates who give the recruiters the most ammo gets interviewed and often gets hired. Okay, so habit number 3 is they stay calm in turbulence. So let me tell you something recruiters are always watching for, even if they never say it. Because they're not just assessing whether you can do the job, they're actually assessing whether you can hold it together, because at senior levels, things always get messy. And here's where a lot of candidates go wrong. When they don't know the answer, they panic quietly. They over-explain, they guess, or they fill the silence with waffle and try to talk their way out of the uncertainty. And now they think they're showing competence, but what they're actually signaling to the recruiter is fragility. And experienced recruiters read this instantly. Because if somebody unravels in a calm interview, what's going to happen to them when the pressure is real in the job? And that's the risk calculation happening in the recruiter's head. Now think about a pilot flying through turbulence. The plane shakes, the conditions are maybe unclear, the passengers get nervous, but the pilot doesn't panic. They don't grab the mic and start explaining every instrument. They stay calm, they assess, and they readjust the course. And that calm, it tells everyone on board, we're okay. And senior candidates do the same thing. When they don't have the full answer, they say, I don't have the complete picture yet. Here's what we know, here's the risk, but here's how I'd move forward. Because there's no drama, there's no over talking, and there's no collapse. And here's why that matters to recruiters. Because recruiters stake their reputation on every placement. And so if a senior hire implodes under pressure, it's the recruiter who gets the angry call from the client. So recruiters are constantly asking, will this person stay grounded when things get hard? And your calm, structured responses answer that question instantly. And that makes you feel safe to place with their client, because no one expects you to know everything, but they do expect you not to panic under pressure. Because leadership isn't about eliminating turbulence, but it's about being able to fly steadily through it. And the candidates who get hired, well, they sound like the pilots and not the passengers. Okay, so habit number 4 is they build systems. So there's a signal that recruiters pick up on almost immediately. And it's not intelligence, and it's definitely not confidence, because at senior levels, memory breaks, but systems scale. And here's what the recruiters notice. It's that some candidates are consistent. They remember what was agreed. They reference decisions accurately, and they connect the conversations over time. Whereas others just don't. They contradict themselves, or they reopen settled topics, or they just lose the thread of the conversation. It's the same experience, but it's very different risk. And recruiters read that as reliability or not. Because if you can't keep a clean thread through an interview process, what happens when you're running a function under pressure? Now think about it like air traffic controllers. Air traffic controllers are managing dozens of planes at once. Different altitudes, different speeds, different priorities. And they don't rely on memory to do that. They rely on systems. Systems like radar or flight paths or clear protocols. Because without those systems, obviously the planes collide. And senior candidates do the same thing. They don't keep everything in their head. They externalize those decisions. They track priorities and they document the follow-ups. And their systems prevent collisions between teams, timelines, and expectations. And here's why that matters to the recruiters. Because recruiters aren't just hiring credibility, they're actually managing downside risk. They're asking things like, will this person create clarity, or will everything depend on them remembering? And the candidates who build systems feel predictable, And predictability, well, it feels safe. And senior leaders don't rely on memory. They build systems that keep the work moving forward safely. And recruiters can hear the difference. Okay, so here's habit number 5, and it's my favorite, is that they're transparent. Because there's a habit that recruiters care more about than anything else. And it's one that most candidates misunderstand. And it's all about transparency. Now, it's not about salary, it's not about tactics, but it is about intentions. Because in my opinion, job searching is a lot like dating. Because some people are out there looking for something serious, while others are casually exploring. And some people are happy where they are, but curious about what else is out there. Now that's about the job market, not dating. And neither of them are wrong. But the problem always starts when those intentions are not clear. And in dating, the worst situations, they're not casual relationships, but they're the ones where one person thinks it's casual and the other's planning for a future. Because that's when things blow up. And the exact same thing happens in hiring. Because recruiters don't get frustrated when candidates are just exploring the job market. They get frustrated when the intent is misrepresented. Because when a candidate goes deep into an interview process and then suddenly says, actually, I'm not ready to move, or the worst, I was just hoping this would improve my offer at my current company. And this doesn't just waste everyone's time, but it damages trust with clients and definitely internally. But look, in the interest of fairness, recruiters are not perfect either. Recruiters are notoriously known for ghosting, or sometimes even a lack of transparency on the relationships that they have, and therefore can't deliver what they said they could to you. But the transparency, it works both ways. And I can tell you from experience, the candidates who recruiters champion for hardest are the ones who are clear early and transparent throughout the process. So here's what transparent candidates do. They say things like, I am exploring seriously, but I'm not rushing my decision. Or, I'd move for the right role, which has A, B, and C requirements. Or, I'm open to counteroffers, but only if X changes. And you have to remember, that's not a weakness. That's actually maturity. And from a recruiter's point of view, that transparency answers one big fear. Is this person going to surprise me late in the process? Because your clear intentions, they make the outcomes predictable. And again, that predictability feels safe. And safe candidates, well, they get backed more. And in dating, it's the same. Clarity doesn't ruin attraction, but it does prevent drama. And in hiring, that transparency doesn't reduce your leverage. It actually increases the trust. Recruiters just need your honesty about your intent. Because the candidates that they champion most aren't the ones playing games. They are the ones that are clear about what they're looking for. So now you know the 5 habits recruiters actually back. But even strong candidates still get ignored. Not because they're weak, but because LinkedIn quietly works against them. So watch this video right here, where I'm going to show you the 7 LinkedIn mistakes making you invisible to recruiters. Because if recruiters can't find you clearly, everything else you just learned stays theoretical.